The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Now, full disclosure, we're getting things kicked off from Arizona this morning. And sunrise behind me on hole number 16. I am not here staking out for Dylan Raiola. I promise you, I'm down here to see my grandmother. Grandma Shirley, great-grandma, she had to have a partial hip replacement. She's doing awesome. She also has a big red Nebraska flag in her room. So she's been asking about Raiola all weekend. I'm like, Grandma, Raiola had a great time, Elijah, at PBA this weekend. That has swept Husker Nation. Husker basketball on the minds of many. Husker baseball, a 180. And, oh, yeah, Nebraska's still in the thick of this race for the number one prospect in 2024. We'll get it all covered today on Hail Varsity Radio. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. Can also check us out across the Hail Varsity Network, 1-800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio or at Herbal Essence for Elijah. Herbel can watch the show with Hail Varsity's Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. And also the Hail Varsity YouTube page is where you go to watch things. KFOR Sports, KFOR Facebook, and KFOR Twitter also allowed to stream. Elijah, pretty impressive weekend, specifically on the recruiting front. Nebraska is getting a lot of love from the Raiolas, first of all, but also you look at some of the national recruiting experts. I look at Steve Wiltfong with 24/7, and he had a pretty in-depth story just on where things stand. You had a special announcement last night from Dylan Raiola, and it got a lot of Husker fans slamming their brakes on to check out what was going to happen. It was Dylan just tweeting out all of his Power 5 offers, and some rolled their eyes. Some was like, well done, young man, to continue to keep the fever pitch of attention going. But, hey, when it boils down to it, Elijah, it was just a nephew, right, and his uncle going to a basketball game right next in a suite, separated by whatever it separated on that second level, a head football coach and his program. But good for Nebraska. Good for Nebraska being proactive. Good for Nebraska using their advantage. Good for Nebraska, I don't want to say pushing the envelope to make it sound like it's something sinister, but there's a loophole here. Hammer that loophole and make it impossible to say no if you're Nebraska, not only from a family standpoint, not only from a dad and connectivity standpoint to this program, but you yourself, if you're Matt Rule. I know you can't technically get FaceTime, but Coach Donnie can get FaceTime and just continue to make it an impossible no if you're Nebraska.
Well, yeah, if you're Coach Matt Rule, you can't get FaceTime, but how convenient is that? You come into a basketball game with your uncle and you're sitting in the suite right next to him. You can wave at him. How convenient is this? Yeah, this is not like me going and visiting my Uncle John in Denver and going and catching a Nuggets game. It's a little bit different whenever you're up in the suite, you get treated like a king, and in the second half, the athletic director says, hey, come down and come check out my view from my seat here at Pinnacle Bank Arena. That's something special. That's actually what stood out most to me is the athletic director. I shouldn't call it getting involved in the recruitment, but I'm not sure what other way to put it whenever you're getting the number one player in the country to come down and sit in your courtside seats for the second half of Nebraska, Minnesota. And conveniently from those spots, you're also going to get some time on TV, time on Big Ten Network. Every single time we get a cut of a replay, who's that sitting in the background but Dylan Raiola? And you're sitting right in front of the student section too. A great PR move by Trev and by Nebraska and I guess by Donnie as well to get Dylan here, use that recruiting loophole, get him some FaceTime in front of the Nebraska fans. And hey, that's Nebraska's biggest selling point is the fans. The fact that, you know what, whenever you come here, you're going to be a star. If your play on the field matches what your recruiting acumen appears to be right now, you're going to be able to make a whole bunch of money in NIL. You're going to get to be a hometown hero of sorts. And let's get you that experience right now while you're a junior in high school. Let's show you what the Nebraska love is all about at a time when nobody else can get any recruiting done because of the recruiting dead period. We have a loophole right here. We're going to use that loophole. A beautiful job done by Nebraska this weekend. And I'm not sitting here saying that Nebraska is a shoo-in to get Dylan Raiola. I think this weekend was definitely a step in a positive direction. We had Dylan speak with some media following the basketball game as well, saying, I've never experienced anything like what I experienced here at Pinnacle Bank Arena today. The fans, I've known they're the best in the country, and they showed why today. That was paraphrasing what Dylan Raiola had to say following the game. But all in all, a very, very successful recruiting but not recruiting weekend for Nebraska.
Well, it's just hanging out with my uncle, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Raiola able to build a rapport from hey, Uncle Donnie, what's going on with the offense? Let's just pretend that question was asked or followed up on this weekend. And you've got Satterfield, you've got Rule, you've got another visit that's pending March 25th. You've got other high-profile recruits for 2024 that are like, okay, I want to play with that guy. I want to block for that guy. So you've got furthered relationship development. You have Spencer Rattler, and I'm going to go back to this. Rattler's high school coach is where Raiola is going to end up here next fall. And then you've got that common denominator in Marcus Satterfield. So listen, and I know we took some guff Saturday on quit, just shut up with the USC takes. Look, I get it. I know USC's got 5-star talent committing or there already, but guess what? 5-star talent decommits or transfers. Okay. It's a year-to-year deal. And the minute a starter gets benched, I would put odds, and I don't have this scientific, I'd put on that 80% of the time they bolt. First time you bench a kid, they leave, okay? It sucks, but that's how it is, or it feels like, especially at the quarterback position. And so, I think Nebraska's right there, and I would even lean from a recency standpoint. He's just been here. He's up here seeing his uncle. That's incredible. And then what happens the 25th is going to seal it. My take is this. I think if you're Dylan, you're going to continue your visits. You had Raiola, Papa Raiola saying, look, we're still going to Georgia. I don't know where that noise came out that we were not going to officially visit Georgia, or not officially, but not going to take a spring trip to Georgia. They'll hit USC again. But Nebraska will be heavy in their hearts in a good way, just because of what we all laid out. It was just a great showcase for Nebraska. This goes back to, Mitch Sherman will be with us tomorrow, Elijah, the boomer bust discussion with Raiola. Listen, I think it'd be devastating to some if Raiola does not commit to Nebraska. I think Raiola and Satterfield can find beyond a serviceable quarterback, post Sims and post Thompson and post whoever's on the roster. They can find somebody in 2024. They can find somebody in 2025. And the fact that they're in this discussion without him even coaching a game yet, coming off a 4-8 season, it speaks to the uncle factor, sure. But it just speaks to the belief factor and the relationship development that the Rule has. Rule's got an uncanny ability to get coaches and players sell out for him. I like this guy so much. I'm going to give it. And I think that
you cut out briefly there, but I just want to hit on some of the main points that you were getting into there, Schmitty, and first and foremost being that selling job from Matt Rhule. And I just want to bring something up here as you go along with this recruitment. This is going to be a decision that's done before this Husker football season starts. Dylan Raiola, that's how the standard is with these quarterbacks. They're going to get through their spring visits. They're going to get back home. They're probably going to have a decision May or June. That's about the standard for your top of the class quarterbacks, is you want to have that done. So once your senior year rolls around, you're not worried about recruiting anymore in terms of where you're going to go. You're worried about recruiting in terms of bringing talent along with your recruiting class along with you. You're going and talking to the other 5 stars in the country that you know, the 4 stars that you're good friends with, the people around your high school. You're going to go talk with them, try to get them in the boat. You're going to solidify the class, so you're bringing in talent with you. That's the standard. I'm not guaranteeing that's what's going to happen, but if history is any indicator, that's probably how this is going to go as it goes on. So let's not also think that whenever this commitment is made that it is done in terms of the recruitment. I think if Nebraska is the choice for Dylan Raiola, you commit and then you continue evaluating how this season goes as the fall goes on. You know what? If this becomes a 3-9 season, you say, well, good thing it's not December yet. I haven't signed. Let's go back and check out what USC has to offer. And to that point about USC, we did get comments in on our Saturday show saying USC's out of the picture. That's not going to happen because
I don't believe that,
because they're going and talking to other quarterbacks. Let me make one thing pretty clear. If you're the number 1 player in the country, the number 1 quarterback in the country, you didn't get there by doubting your own abilities. I am sure Dylan Raiola has supreme confidence in his own abilities, and he's not worried about what other quarterback other schools are bringing in. You're the number 1 player in the country. You're the number 1 player in the country for a reason. Those guys, I don't want to call it ego because I don't know the kid. I don't know Dylan personally. I can't speak to him on if he has an ego, but that's just the general way you put it with these high-level athletes. They are confident in their own abilities, and they're not going to be worried about what other quarterback there's going to be in the room because you think, you know what? I am the best quarterback, not only in my recruiting class, but I'm the best quarterback in the country. I'm going to go prove it wherever I go. I don't think other quarterbacks are going to be a massive factor in the recruitment here. And also, other schools are going to know if you get the number 1 player in the country, you're going to make that work. And I don't want to say you're going to leave other quarterbacks hanging out to dry, but you know the number 1 player in the country is your priority, and you're going to do what it takes to make him happy and get him to your school. So USC most definitely not out of the running. It's a similar story with Georgia. They're going to be stacking talent no matter what happens with Dylan Raiola's recruitment, but at the end of the day, the number 1 player in the country is the priority, and it's the same way with Nebraska. Matt Rhule has made it clear throughout this spring that Dylan is the number 1 priority for Nebraska, and as a result, you mentioned the fact that the Georgia visit was canceled, at least reportedly, and then it turned out it was just moved. What is important about that is Nebraska is now the last visit in his spring cycle. That's a huge visit to have. You know what? You're going to go to the other schools, but the one, usually how it goes, the favorite, you're going to leave last so you can go to them and say, here's what I saw at the other schools. What do you have? What can you sell me on? Because you're my favorite right now, and I'm going to give you all the opportunities in the world to match what these other schools have shown me. So you put Nebraska last, and you say, Georgia has this, this, and this. That's what they sold me on. What can you tell me about Nebraska? What can you sell me on as a counterpoint to those things? So that's what's huge about Dylan Raiola. The last visit he's taken this spring is Nebraska. Nebraska is your front runner right now. Not even close to a done deal, but that is where we're headed right now, and I don't think this weekend did anything to hurt Dylan Raiola's chances of coming to Nebraska. I think it was a very, very successful recruiting weekend, though it wasn't a recruiting weekend, but it was for Matt Rhule, Trev Alberts, and staff.
You know, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, it's Hail Varsity Radio, kicking off a Monday on Dylan Raiola, his visit to Nebraska PBA, the worship that went on inside the arena. Listen, the more and more I think about it, you want to talk about the ability to appeal if you're not at the level, right, as a USC, if you're not at the level right now of what Georgia's doing. Few are, right? Nebraska's not far off, I don't believe, from being 9-3, 10-2, being a second or a third best team in their pod, being the best team in their pod or side of the division. I think Nebraska has the talent here. It's got to get coached up, and I think Coach Rhule and his crew can do that. I don't think the turnaround time's awful. I don't think it could be. You want to be part of that accelerant if you're Dylan Raiola. And I think it could really work in Nebraska's favor be this program changer versus the next guy who goes and wins another Rose Bowl at USC, goes 11-2 and wins a Heisman. That's all great. It's wonderful. But do all that here and change a program or help get a program back, right? I mean, Carson Palmer did that for USC back when Pete Carroll showed up. Well, Nebraska's had a couple, 3 quarterbacks take Nebraska from good to great. Turner Gill, Tommy Frazier is Dylan Raiola, that third guy. So fascinating to see. We'll spend some more time on Nebraska basketball's weekend. Not their greatest game, but a spark by Sammy Hoiberg was big time, and they just kind of drilled Minnesota. It's all good. Here comes Sparty tomorrow, Elijah.
Yeah, and it's incredible that Dylan Raiola is able to take steam away from the basketball team like that. They're on their best stretch ever since Fred Hoiberg has taken charge. And, now Dylan Raiola sitting courtside at a game. We're going to talk about that for the first segment. So we will have more thoughts with Husker basketball coming up a little bit later in the show. They're on a 4-game winning streak, looking to make it 5 tomorrow night against Michigan State. We're going to be at Rosie's, Schmidt and myself, as Schmidt gets back from Phoenix. We're looking forward to that as Nebraska.
4-6 tomorrow down at Rosie's. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman will be with us. Mitch Sherman joins us. Jack Ebling, Mr. Michigan State. You've met Jack, you know him, so that's cool. Today, loaded up. Jay Moore with us.
Right after the break, Jay Moore is going to be talking with us.
Yep, Uncle Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride with us in hour 2. Brady Oltmans, his take on the recruiting weekend. Stick around. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Monday edition here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. And we got Jay Moore on the line. But before we get to Jay, just some quick housekeeping. You just heard from Schmitty as Schmitty checked in with us ahead of his flight back from Arizona. He is actually en route from Omaha now. So made the flight back and should be joining us for hour 2 of Hail Varsity Radio. In the meantime, we're going to have Will Wilson joining us here to close out this hour. But before we get Will in here, we're going to talk with former Blackshirt, I should say, Jay Moore. Jay Moore, we're going to get some reaction to Dylan Raiola, his visit this weekend. And Jay, whenever you look at this weekend as a whole, it was craziness with the Husker basketball team, with Dylan Raiola, with the apparent post last night that was going to be made. Husker Nation was going crazy. At the end of the day, Dylan Raiola seems to have had a good visit with his uncle. No recruiting involved, quote unquote. And that's where we're at right now. What is your reaction to what we saw this weekend? Dylan Raiola in town checking out the basketball game.
Yeah, it's always good to have the number 1 recruit in 2024 in town, and obviously I feel like we should have a leg up on all the competition because of his dad's history here, and obviously having an uncle be a coach here. I know the previous staff didn't do a very good job in building a relationship with him, but I feel like the current staff has tried to amend and fix that relationship. I feel like they have. So it's going to be interesting, next, 3 weeks? I think he's supposed to come here on an official visit sometime late March 24th-ish, I believe. You can also correct me if I'm wrong. I don't follow recruiting super closely, but I think that's going to be, and I know myself included, and I don't follow recruiting that hard, it's a big one to get, obviously, with him being the number 1 guy. But you get the number 1 guy, and guess what? A lot of times the number 1 receiver wants to come play with you. The number 1 tight end wants to come commit, play with you. The number 1 running back wants to come play with you as well. So it's getting him is important, and just keeping that family history, that legacy intact as well. I think is a pretty cool thing that Nebraska does have some really good history here as well. Because I've played with, I played with both the Rude brothers. There's many more families, Nebraska families that have played together, and I think keeping that intact will be very, very important. I think and cool to see that if that does come true, it's just whether or not Lincoln Riley can keep from shining all those Heisman Trophy winners that he's able to develop to Dylan. That's just going to be the key component there to Dodge, because I think he does have a seat at the table just with his success and the quarterbacks he's coached throughout his time at USC and at Oklahoma.
Jay Moore is with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, really fast here, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of Dominic Raiola if you could. I know you have a little guy at home, and that's a long ways off from any sort of college recruitment. But, like, would you try to influence him and bring him to Nebraska? It doesn't sound like Dominic is trying to do so, but it almost feels like there's a little bit of that just ingrained within a player being a former Husker, them having a kid in the recruitment process. He may not be intentionally trying to send his son to Nebraska, but it's got to play a factor, right? Just with how important, the University of Nebraska is in a former player's life.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I have a 6-year-old at the house, and I've instilled into him day one, there's only one college team we root for, and that's Nebraska. And if there's definitely no Iowa. I have a small place in my heart for Duke basketball. I'll allow that. I've been a Duke guy since Grant Hill was there, so I said it's okay we can root for the Duke Blue Devils in basketball, but that's about it. We'll cheer on all the professional teams you want, but there's only one college football team to root for, just one college team in general that we root for. Because whether it comes to football, volleyball, basketball, baseball, you name it down the list. That's the only one we cheer for, and there's only one color that we know in the house that represents. And so I do think there is something to that. And I hope that he has, he understands. Dylan understands the history of Nebraska football. I mean, his dad was, left after the 2000 season, and he was part of, Dominic was on the last Big 12 championship team or last conference championship team in 1999. He was arguably part of some of the best Nebraska teams in history that didn't win a national championship. The 99 team and the 2000 team were right up there. And, 99 team easily could have been if they didn't get beat at Texas, that same year that they ended up beating them in the Big 12 championship. So that is the history's there. It's just the trouble is just not having the recent success that all these other schools that have recruited him, and whether that be USC or Georgia or Alabama, or you just go down the list of other schools that I'm sure he has offers from that's had way more success in Nebraska. But I think that's what Coach Rule and the staff has done a good job is, okay, they've been here as of lately, but I'm projecting to where we're going to be when you're here. Because we're going to play this 2023 season, and my guess is he will, I don't know his total plans, but I foresee him enrolling early and being here for the spring of 2024 and developing and becoming one of the starting quarterbacks. Maybe he redshirts, I don't know. But just projecting what this is going to be, and I think just understanding, giving him some hope to what this year is going to look like, I think it's going to be, I don't say it's drastically better, but it's going to be better. So I just, given some just a view into the near future, what this program is going to be, obviously the facilities, and then you're able to plug into that history with his dad it's very, 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 very important, and I think that's there's a lot of puzzles to the piece, but I think those puzzles are going to ultimately, finish out to what he needs to hear and what he needs to see to hopefully and eventually, commit to Nebraska.
Jay, whenever you look at the Georgias and the USCs of the world, Nebraska does have something that they can sell over those schools, and that's the fan support. I don't see those schools having the kind of fan support that Nebraska has for a 500 basketball team. And hey, not to mention the fact that whenever you as the number one recruit go to a basketball game, the fans are chanting your name and they already want you to be a Husker. I'm not saying that the fans in Georgia and USC don't want Dylan Raiola, but that's something that's just different about Nebraska, the type of fan support that Nebraska has. And I want you to take us back to your own recruitment. I know you're a Nebraska kid and that kind of changes some things for you, but you did grow up a Husker fan, and by all accounts, Dylan did as well. How big of a factor in your own recruitment, and this is pre-NIL obviously, was just the fan support that Nebraska has?
Yeah, and it's there's no other place like it. I've been to other places, and I've played, the NFL, I've done, and it's, even playing in the NFL, it was hard because the fan support is not near to what some NFL teams were. And granted, I wasn't one of the greatest franchises at the time, but that didn't help. But it's not the same. It just isn't the same. just the fan support and just it's different. It definitely is different. And me just growing up being a fan and knowing from the age, I can't remember, since I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I mean, just hearing, my stories my parents told about, how I always mimicked, being a Nebraska football player. I mean, that's what I wanted to do since I was that young. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to live out that childhood dream. And there was no other place I was going to go. I mean, I took one unofficial visit to Iowa State on a spring game just to do it, just to see another place. I think they maybe had 12 total people at the spring game. They might have had maybe 100 people total. That was probably parents and, some other people that had nothing better to do in Ames, Iowa that day. But this is the greatest place on earth to me. And it's always special. I still live in Lincoln, and there's nothing like it. And I hope he understands that, and I hope he sees that, and I hope that helps influence him to come here, because there is nothing like it. I don't care how good, you go USC, they're not selling out the Coliseum. They even back in the heydays with Reggie Bush, that there were some times where they might have been playing at Fresno State or whatever, and that place wasn't full. So I think it's important. It should be. That's something we can hang our hat on, is the fan support. And I mean, it's rare that you see a team, a 500 basketball team, and it's sold out, or a 3-6 football team, and playing an Indiana or whatever it may be, and the place is sold out, and there's a palpable buzz, and people are excited. People are tailgating since 8 o'clock in the morning. There's something to be said about that, and there's something said we want to be a part of that, because it's crazy. I'd go back and do it all over again in a heartbeat, and go through all the grind, and just because I love representing Nebraska. I love representing the state. I love representing this fan base. So I hope his dad is able to kind of get that across to him, how how important this place is and can be for people that come and go to school here.
Jay, if you're going to call your shot right now, are you willing to do that? Do you think Dylan Raiola is in after seeing the kind of support that he received this weekend and the kind of comments that he made about Nebraska afterwards? Do you think that this is closer to a done deal than it was a couple weeks ago?
I mean, yeah, I'm going to be very surprised if he doesn't pick Nebraska, to be honest. I would be very surprised. I think it's, I would say, 85% done. I just think that Lincoln Riley does have a seat at the table. I think he does, just with his history. And the fact that I don't know what kind of NIL money they're shooting out there at USC in the LA market. That's gonna have a seat at the table as well. And ultimately, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If I'm Lincoln Riley, okay, Dylan, here's all these Heisman Trophy winners I've developed. Here's all the teams that I've brought to the college football playoff. Here's all the money I'm able to get you on NIL deals. So he does have an argument there, but he doesn't have his uncle here. His dad didn't play here. I think it's a little more, there's some variables there, but there's variables that he doesn't have, and that's having his uncle and the history with his dad, and that's going to speak volumes over. To me it would. To me, it would speak volumes to – he's going to get the money. He's going to get the money here. Now, will he have a chance to win maybe championships as early? I don't know. But I do know that USC and UCLA are coming to the Big Ten as well. So there's something to be said with that as well going forward. But like I said, I'd be rather surprised if he doesn't. I think the stars are kind of aligned. I think Rule and his staff have amended the relationship with the Raiola family, and just having a history with his pops and his uncle being here, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, you can come play football to where your dad was, and then have your uncle be a coach, and just have that. That doesn't happen. Like that doesn't happen. So that's why I just foresee him. This is damn near a done deal.
Jay Moore's with us here. Jay, appreciate your time today. We'll talk to you next week. All right, bud?
Yep. See you guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Monday here. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by Currency. We just heard from Blackshirt Jay Moore joining us here, talking some Dylan Raiola on Hail Varsity Radio. We had Schmidt join us back in segment 1. He's going to be rejoining us a little bit later in the show as he's currently on his way back to Lincoln. My best estimate would put it somewhere south of Gretna, but somewhere north of Ashland is Schmidt's current location. And do with that information what you will. He's traveling roughly 85 miles an hour on the interstate, maybe 90, who knows, with him trying to get back for a show. We all know Schmidt doesn't like missing any shows, so he is rolling back from Epley right now. We'll hear from him just a little bit later. For now, I'm excited to be joined here in studio by Will Wilson. You hear him here locally on the Morning Hookup on KFOR, and Will is looking at me with a quizzical look as I have not yet turned on his mic. It's on now, Will.
Thanks, Elijah.
Say hi to the people.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's been a good weekend for Husker athletics with the Raiola visit. We haven't even gotten into the Husker basketball win over Minnesota, except barely touching on it back in segment 1. And I think that's where we'll go now. You're a Husker basketball guy through and through. You've been going to games since you were little, just to set it up for the people who haven't yet met Will. Much bigger Husker fan than me, a Husker basketball fan than me, I should say, where even from childhood, Will was following the Skurs. So
that's nice of you.
I want to get your big takeaways from Nebraska on a 4-game winning streak, with this being the first time since, I believe, 2017 Nebraska's done that in conference play. It feels just like this squad that Fred Hoiberg has right now, how they're playing right now, it's different than any other time of the Hoiberg era.
Yeah, man, they are. I mean, they're playing the best out of the Hoiberg era, and that's clear. They're playing good at the right time. This is when you want to be on that win streak. Getting to the end of the season, you're fighting for some postseason, berths, and this is when you want to do it. It's unbelievable, to be honest. Ask anybody, a few months ago, they thought this team was done. When you lose 2 starters like that, and you lost to some teams in some bad ways, and they had no business doing this, what they're doing now. But they did. They got it together. It's amazing. You got to credit Hoiberg, the guys, for playing together. It's a lot of fun.
Tell me about that Casey impact, because he's been on a heater. It feels like Nebraska, where he's gone, they have followed in the past couple of weeks, as Kisei kind of soars to new heights that Husker basketball team has as well. And a bit of heart and soul from Kisei as well, with the fire that he shows on the court. And we've learned today he's going to be walking for senior day tomorrow. That's been a bit of a standard under Hoiberg, is if you're ever unsure about your return next year, you're going to have you walk on senior day anyway. I think Derek Walker's now in his 3rd senior day overall for this Husker basketball team. So doesn't mean that he's not going to be coming back next year, but just tell me about that impact of Casey and what he's brought to Hoiberg and his squad the year.
Well, we definitely won some games because of him, because of Casey. And let's be real, he's one of the funnest players I think we've ever seen in a Husker basketball uniform.
Most fun to watch since probably James Palmer, if not Tran Petaway. Just in my Husker basketball memory, those are the 2 players that stand out as being really fun to watch.
Yeah,
I think Casey's on another level.
Oh, for sure. He's at the top of that list. So, yeah, when I saw that news today that he was walking, I was kind of scared because, you lose the 3 guys you're already honoring, okay? And if you lose Casey, you lose a big chunk of these minutes. So if Casey doesn't come back next year, you're kind of scared in a way because you're losing a lot of production. But, it's going to be whatever Casey wants to do. He can make a ton of money over in Japan or wherever he's going to play because, right now he's not making any money off NIL. So is that worth it? Is it worth it coming back to play another season of college basketball, not get any NIL money, or go overseas, start a career, and start making a lot of money?
So let's hear from Fred Hoiberg as he met with the media following Nebraska's win over Minnesota on Saturday afternoon. And one of the questions that really stood out to me is, I can't remember who actually asked this question, but it was asked about why this winning streak is happening right now. After all the adversity this team has faced, they could have packed it in. Why now? What have you seen behind the scenes that has allowed your team to go on a 4-game winning streak? Potentially, you have the chance at 6 to close the year with Michigan State and Iowa looming. Fred was asked that question, and he really said it comes down to the makeup of this team.
It's a team that stayed together very well. It's got leadership that I think is important when you're trying to string games together like this. Griesel, obviously, and Derek are huge in that area. I know the guys talked a lot about in the press conference a couple days ago about Emmanuel still leading and talking to his team. So that's where it starts. If you have good leadership out there and, you win a couple in a row, now you can do it. And I think that gives confidence to your players. We're going to have a hell of a challenge on Tuesday. We know that. It's going to be very emotional for our seniors. I still remember my senior day. I got my butt beat and still bothers me to this day. So, it's emotional. You got to find a way to put it behind you, after you go out there and you get introduced with your family and your parents who spend so much time, and they're the reason that I think the people in this position are where they are because of your parents, and you're out there in center court with them. And, it's going to be emotional for Sam, especially, being from here. It was for me when in my hometown in Ames. Derek, it shouldn't bother him. It's his third one. But, it's Manuel, and, it's going to be an emotional day. But we got to find a way after that to put it behind us and come out and compete, because I know Michigan State's going to come in here and, be ready to go.
Well, let's talk about one of the seniors real quick that you went to school with way back when in your days walking the halls at Lincoln East High School. Sam Griesel. An unexpected journey for him to even reach Nebraska at all. It's been his dream since he was little. What's your take on what Sam has brought to the team this year and what senior day is going to mean to him tomorrow night being the hometown kid?
Oh, I mean, Sam is a baller. He is a baller.
You ever take him one-on-one back in the day?
No. Maybe when we were younger. But that was a long time ago, and I wasn't a good ball player. So, I don't know. It's just really cool for everybody in town to see a guy from Lincoln, play this role that he's doing. And he's obviously a really good player, right? He's made some plays that really helped us. That dunk he had last weekend was great. But I like what Fred said. He's right. Michigan State, they're mad right now. After that collapse against Iowa, they need a win. And, I think I saw the early line for that game was Michigan State -3.
Okay.
So Nebraska's looking like a slight underdog, and it's going to be packed, but I agree. I think it's going to be a tough game.
Tell me a little bit. Let's talk about that Iowa game against Michigan State.
Oh, man.
As you sit here, you think Michigan State, they got their hot shooting out of the way against Iowa, putting up, 103 points in regulation? Do you think they got their hot shooting out of the way?
I don't know. I hope so, because, that's going to be tough to match. And we've seen teams kind of glue down on Casey. He had 11 points last time. So defenses are starting to figure that out. But, man, I think it's going to be really – you talk about that game. I mean, what a complete collapse by Michigan State. But, man, there was one last night that was almost worse. You had Rutgers taking down Penn State. Penn State just totally collapsed in that game. It helped us because now we're tied with Penn State and Wisconsin.
Good for Nebraska's Big Ten tourney hopes because Nebraska going for that 10 seed, avoid the play-in, and really with that 10 seed, you're also avoiding the 1 seed in Purdue.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the 8-9 matchup is going to have to end up going and playing Purdue. So 10 seed is kind of ideal for Nebraska. That's what you're shooting for.
It's doable. It's on the table. It's going to be tough though. You need Wisconsin to lose to Purdue. You need Penn State to lose to Northwestern and Maryland, and we need to beat Michigan State or Iowa. I mean, we may need to win out, which I think is going to be tough because going to Iowa is never fun.
They always shoot the lights out at Carver Hawkeye.
Especially against us.
Especially against Nebraska.
Right.
So big game tomorrow night, though, first before Nebraska is out to Iowa as Michigan State's in town. We're going to be at Rosie's 4 to 6. Come check us out. Get yourself a drink. Get yourself ready to go for Nebraska basketball. Will, you're going to be in here for that, so it's good to get you introduced back on the show. It's been a little bit, so you're going to be here running the board as Schmidt and myself are down at Rosie's. Looking forward to that.
Well, 8 o'clock game, so I'll be able to head to the game, too, after the show. So buy the tickets, man. Let's pack that place.
Yeah, still some 300-level tickets available. I saw that today, so should be a good environment. Nebraska, Michigan State tomorrow night. Schmitty will return in hour 2. We're going to say goodbye to Will for now as he's got to get to a workout. But we'll be back with more Hail Varsity Radio coming your way after the break right here.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We're back in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by Currency. Elijah Herbel taking you through the remainder of hour 1 here as Schmitty makes his way back to the studio from his flight from Omaha. I know Schmitty doesn't like missing an hour of radio, so he is moving this way as quickly as he can. Some quick housekeeping to bring you. We do have a slight change to our Monday lineup. Charlie is unable to make it in, so no Black Shirt Monday segment with Charlie. We're going to look to get him rescheduled a little bit later this week. He's actually on a flight right now, so we're going to talk to him as soon as we can. Instead, we're going to talk with Brady Oltmans leading off hour 2 as we're going to talk a little bit more recruiting with Brady. I wonder why. Maybe it was a big recruiting weekend for Nebraska. Dylan Raiola in town. We're going to get Brady's take on that. And then a little bit later in hour 2, we'll have Jeff Smith joining us at 5:25 to talk a little more Husker basketball as well as high school hoops as the district finals are set for this week and we approach state basketball time as the girls getting going. A little bit later this week in downtown Lincoln, we'll have the boys a week from now. Going at it in downtown Lincoln as well. So as they finish up their districts, I know Schmidt and the coach, Jeff, are going to be on the call tonight over on KFOR. So we're going to have Jeff Smith join us and talk a little bit of Preps Hoops. That's coming your way at 5:25. Before we get out of here this hour, one more thought from Fred Hoiberg, his post-game presser against Minnesota. And one of the things that's been so good for the Husker basketball team, at least especially as of late, but really all season long, has been the defense. Hoiberg got into that following the Minnesota win. Did he think Minnesota was confused by Nebraska's defensive scheme? And just what is Nebraska doing defensively this year that's setting them apart from other years of the Fred Hoiberg era?
I don't think we're very confusing on defense, but, I thought, again, it's all about the activity level. And if you have good hands and, you go in there and, if you have a soft trap, it's easy to spray it out. If you come with high hands, you make a looping pass, you have much better chance to rotate. Our first half rotations, I thought, were really crisp, not quite as good in the second. We adjusted. We didn't double quite out as far on the floor. But again, as important as Derek is for our team, we have to protect him, and we have to send double teams. And, point to Blaze, who has been terrific when we've gone with that big lineup. You look at his analytic splits, he's been as good as anybody. So, with him off the floor and then playing Payne, Garcia in battle, and they played Ola Joseph at the 2 at 6'8", that poses problems. We obviously aren't the biggest group right now, but our guys compete and they fight like hell, and that's what's been fun.
The best representation, in my opinion, of that competition has been Sam Hoiberg. What a clutch player he's been as of late with those hustle plays down the stretch in important games, important moments. He seems to always be stepping up on the defensive end. And so we'll see what Nebraska basketball can bring tomorrow. Again, this hour, if you're just joining us here, it's Elijah Herbel finishing out the hour. Chris Schmidt's going to be joining us a little bit later next hour. We had Jay Moore earlier this hour, so if you missed our interview with Jay, you can check that out in podcast form. That would be the Hail Varsity YouTube page is a great way to check following the show. Also, wherever you get podcasts, that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon Music, wherever you like to get your podcasts, you can find it there. We also get the link up on our Twitter page at Varsity Radio just about every single night. And while I'm at it, that's some good resources for you. Find us on Twitter. It's a great way to stay up to date with the show at Varsity Radio, as I said. And then at Herbal Essences for me, Elijah Herbel, at Schmidt_radio for Schmidt, who we'll be hearing from here in about 15 minutes if all goes to plan with his travel. So excited to hear back from Schmidt. Again, Brady Oltmans joining us to lead off hour 2. We'll also have the coach, Jeff Smith, joining us, and maybe a few more thoughts from Fred Hoiberg, his post-game press conference following Nebraska's win over Minnesota. That's all coming your way in hour 2. Again, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. We've got more coming your way here in about 10 minutes.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, big tip of the cap to Elijah Herbel. Big thanks to you, Big Cat, for hanging out, holding her down. I got in from Epley, good flight, got a little nap, did not use the drink tickets. I'm raring to go. Brady Oltmans with us.
Big cap to you for making it down here following the flight.
Yeah,
you're built different. I'm not sure about you, but I would have said, oh, yeah, my flight doesn't get in until 9. Yeah, I guess I'm just gone for the whole night.
Big week. We got a big week. High school basketball coming up as well. Brady Oltmans with us from Hail Varsity. Brady, let's talk about the Raiola moment. Thanks for jumping on with us. Short notice. Appreciate you doing so. And tell me your read-in to the weekend, the impact, and ultimately here the sway a weekend like last weekend, seeing your uncle, of course, could have for the number one quarterback in 2024.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, there was really no indication at all. I had got a little bit of a notice just in that kind of rumor spottings of him at Epley, and kind of just brushed those off because I hadn't been told anything that they were going to make an impromptu visit. I knew Dominique had said something at some point that because of family, it wasn't really a dead period for him. But I didn't know what to make of that. I didn't figure that would include a visit. And then we got kind of confirmation. I think it was our buddy Mitch Sherman over at The Athletic got it confirmed that they were in the Raiola family. The Arizona Raiola family was visiting the Raiola family in Lincoln. And then they showed up at the game. And it was a big game. It wasn't solely like, they're going to make this a pseudo recruiting trip at all. I mean, if you're going to visit family, that Nebraska men's basketball game was a pretty big ticket in town where a lot of people were. So you could kind of, brush that off, I guess. The indication I kind of got out after it and kind of the hearsay was, Dylan was pretty blown away. He got a standing ovation. He, to his credit, is kind of egging the crowd on through the bones and stuff there. And I know he's a top 10, top 5 at one point, the number one, recruit in the country, but he's still a teenager. And I think this whole situation could really wear on a kid of his stature, but he seemed to really enjoy that. And he seemed to really be calm and poised throughout this whole recruiting process. And I think that you tend to admire that about a young man, especially a young football player, and then especially a young quarterback. I think that's kind of the prevailing moment. And now it's just kind of sit and wait and see what happens in the next month.
Brady, tell me about the university trying to ride that fine line between this being, just a visit to the uncle and it being a recruiting visit. I mean, whenever you hear, oh, well, Dylan's in the suite right next to Matt Rule, and now he's sitting in the AD's seats courtside. How is Nebraska riding that fine line? What kind of loophole are they able to use here with Uncle being on staff?
Well, I think the general loophole is just the proximity that they're able to be in via Donovan being on staff. I haven't got it confirmed or anything about the logistics of if imagine it being like a 1960s cartoon where one person's in one room and then they move and then, they're trying to, like a Simpsons style kind of cartoon where they're moving around so they're not in the same room together. I haven't gotten that locked down or confirmed on how they're doing that, but you've got to imagine that I don't know if they were aware, but Donovan might have been aware that they were coming, hence hosting them. I think that there has to be some sort of contingency plan that the university has had that says, okay, well, what are we allowed to do? And then how much, what's the most we can do allowable, through NCAA rules. So I think there's probably been some sort of troubleshooting for such a scenario.
Brady Oltmans with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, and find him on Twitter at Brady Oltmans. Let's talk about the race right now for Dylan Raiola's services. And to your knowledge, the visit list with Georgia, the visit list and he's been to SC already, and then Nebraska that March 24th, 25th weekend. Kind of lay out where things in your mind are at right now. Yeah, you took a trip to see Uncle Donnie during a dead period. You're going to have a chance to do more visits, unofficial visits, and where's Nebraska in this race right now? I mean, I'm not trying to ask a stupid question. It's pretty obvious and evident. But that said, SC and Georgia aren't. They've been in these battles. They've won these battles. Although Georgia's not closed they missed out on Arch Manning, I guess, is their recent history.
Yeah. So the easiest way to break it down is kind of since the Polynesian Bowl, there were 4 schools: Nebraska, USC, Georgia, and Oregon. Oregon has kind of fallen off. They had a good tie with Dan Lanning because Georgia was the first school to offer Dylan. He had a good relationship there and kind of followed Dan, and now it kind of seems like Oregon's not as much of an option. So that leaves Nebraska, USC, and Georgia. As I said, Georgia was the first school to offer him, 2-time defending national champion. They've made a lot of inroads, but they're also pursuing other quarterbacks. That I don't know if is really a make or break. I can't imagine it would be a break. Hence, him still entertaining Georgia, and he's planning to visit Georgia, I think, a week before he's scheduled to visit Nebraska. Kirby Smart video chatted Dylan from the locker room after the national championship last January, and that's a pretty big, recruiting hook if you can get it, I guess. So there's a lot of ties there. Obviously, with USC, you've got Lincoln Riley, who's coached 3 Heisman-winning quarterbacks, and they've got a lot of a litany of talent there, including Malachi Nelson, one of the top quarterbacks of this recent recruiting class. And then you've got Nebraska, which hasn't really had a premier quarterback recruit for a while, and perennially, not really a 5-star destination, or a destination for 5-star recruits, I should say. But they have that connection. Matt Rule's coaching staff has really kind of hit it out of the ballpark in terms of gaining ground and getting in a finalist capacity with Dylan, to the point where they're hosting him, March 25th, March 24th weekend, with a bevy of other 4-star, 5-star recruits, and hoping to gain a little bit of momentum out of that.
Yeah, Brady, that recruiting weekend at the end of March, it doesn't feel like a coincidence, the fact that Dylan Raiola flipped his official visit, so it would be that weekend whenever there's a lot of high-level kids in town. Almost feels like the first chance at peer recruiting for Dylan Raiola. I don't want to say this is a done deal. We kind of went through this back in hour 1, but as it stands right now, Nebraska is the clear favorite with a weekend like that where it's your final official visit of the spring. You got a whole bunch of kids on campus, some 5-stars, some 4-stars, a lot of chances for Dylan Raiola to make some inroads with some of these other guys Nebraska's recruiting. That does feel like a chance for Nebraska to really put together something special in this class of 2024 that weekend.
Yeah, it's the old parlance where you want to be either the first one, the first place to visit, or you want to leave the lasting impression to be the last place that a kid visits. Those are, in the history of recruiting, those are, kind of the 2 spots you want to be in. I kind of wrote about this in my column this morning for Hail Varsity. It's him coming that weekend. It's about, in the recruitment of Dylan Raiola, is about more than him. I mean, you get him in, obviously he's a big part, of potential program altering trajectory quarterback, but you've got all those kids in there. They want to play with other big time talents. Dylan's a pretty personable guy and a young man who's a student of the game. I mean, he's worked with Matt Stafford. He's worked with some other NFL quarterbacks that Dominique Raiola's had, connections with in the NFL to coach him up. I know when he's visited Nebraska before, he's visited with Casey Thompson and has talked with Nebraska quarterbacks and Nebraska quarterback coaches about ball, and just kind of picking their brains. So I think that there's no secret to having all of those big time caliber guys together. And I think that if you can get if you were a 5-star or 4-star receiver, somebody who wants to play with Dylan Raiola, and you see that he's, really vibing the visit, if it's good enough for him, a lot of those kids say it might be good enough for me, and they might take Nebraska a little bit more seriously coming out of that weekend.
Brady Oltmans with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Catch his Raiola recap and do so, HailVarsity.com. Get the subscription, digital, print, HailVarsity.com/offer. So let's talk timeline here. For an announcement, Eddie scuttlebutt on a date after the month of March. Is it going to be an April, a May? Because quarterbacks pretty much pull the trigger first, and that's your foundation for a lot of classes, for a lot of schools.
I haven't heard anything directly in terms of timeline. I think I keep going back to something that Dylan had said in a previous interview, which is that words from his father were keep the circle small. Keep your inner circle pretty small and don't really let people know what you're kind of thinking. And I think that they've done a really good job of keeping it close to the best. Hint, the visit this last weekend that they kept a secret until it couldn't be a secret anymore. My general viewpoint is to keep kind of the same timeline that they had last year when he committed to Ohio State. Now, I tend to think maybe he might commit a little bit earlier just because of the proximity and the timing of his visit in late March. Maybe he lets a couple of weeks sink in to decide that's really where he wants to be. And then he kind of figures out what to do, and then, watch the dominoes start to fall in the couple of weeks after with potential other recruits. And if it's good news for Nebraska, that could be a windfall. But then also if he ends up going a Georgia or a USC route, then Nebraska's got to be a little bit more pedal to the metal on other kids like a Danny Kaline, out of Bellevue West, a very capable quarterback. He just has the unfortunate circumstance of being a quarterback in this class, coming out of Nebraska. And I think that especially if Dylan's off the table, he'd be a guy that they would really want to try to seal a commitment on pretty quick thereafter.
Brady, do you think Nebraska would take two? When you mentioned Daniel Kaline, do you think Nebraska would take two quarterbacks this cycle, or do you think that that's kind of what sets Nebraska apart from these other schools, is that they are solely focused on one guy, and that guy is Dylan Raiola, excuse me?
I haven't really gotten an indication that they go after two guys. I think they like Danny, guys like Anthony Rizak's, great caliber of talent there, and Nebraska has some good quarterbacks, even a Carson Ronner out of Elkhorn South. Again, they just have the unfortunate circumstance of being in this particular recruiting class with the top recruit. I think that they're all in on Dylan. If they take a quarterback later on, that might be something, but he is top priority number one. And if it's maybe a make or break thing that they get another quarterback in this class, they'll stick with Dylan. But they've also, I tend to think that this might be the one that they get. They've got a couple of guys still on roster and a couple of guys who might mentor or compete with him once he gets here, because I think he is going to be a spring enrollee after this upcoming fall season. And then they'll look at quarterbacks kind of in the recruiting classes to come.
Any insight on the communication between Casey Thompson and Raiola?
The thing I get from Casey is that Casey's a team guy. I think we saw that last year in the way that it played out. I mean, I think he has a little different leadership mantra or mentality than a lot of Nebraska fans might be used to. And he took a beating, but even before he got injured, that I think back to that Rutgers game where he got knocked down and touched, his first 9 dropbacks. And eventually he got up and, the offensive line was looking to pound knuckles with him. And Casey gave a cold shoulder to a couple of them. And it was pretty obvious, like, he's not happy, but he kept coming back. He's a leader by, his nature, the way that he's built. He's clearly a great student, having now, he could basically go for his doctorate now if he wanted to. And I think he enjoys that process of it. He enjoys passing on his knowledge and picking the brains of other people to get into it. And I think that if you're in his shoes, you kind of like to talk with a guy of a Dylan Raiola, who's also learned from other NFL greats and who has kind of learned along the way, now going to go and play for the guy who coached Spencer Rattler in high school, No,
that makes a ton of sense, and tap into all the information available for sure. Brady Oltmans, great information with HailVarsity.com and magazine. Can find him on Twitter at Brady Oltmans. Brady, thanks for giving us a few minutes today. Thanks for jumping on, man, and great intel there on Raiola and his visit.
Yeah, guys, happy to talk anytime.
Appreciate it, man. Good to spend time with him. We will no doubt probably rope him in on Friday again. We got a busy schedule of state basketball this week and next. So excited about that.
Wait, you're telling me we have other things to do this week besides talk about Dylan Raiola?
Not really today, but...
See, I was going to say, like, those are my plans for the entire week. I thought it was going to be Dylan Raiola early and often all week long. I got to prepare, you're telling me?
No, you're all right. You're all right. Tomorrow, prepare to get your red out and find your way down to Rosie's. 10th and P is where we want to see you, just south of the embassy. And we get there at 4. We kick it off. We tip it off 4-6. Nebraska, Michigan State. They tip at 8. That means there's time for you to get wings, time for you to get a burger, time for you to get a cold one, and then be there, be loud, and see if Nebraska can will their way to another victory. Sparty's coming in wounded. They're coming in injured. Nebraska's been as hot as it gets, but great atmosphere. We'll be at Rosie's tomorrow. Downtown Rosie's, 10th and P, 4-6. Come see us. Coach Jeff Smith on the way with Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach, longtime assistant with Nebraska, Jeff Smith with us. Coach, we've got a lot of district ball to talk. We'll do that shortly, but how about Nebraska basketball? I know you've been smiling with what Fred and the Big Red have been doing. How are you today?
I'm great. I tell you, I'm smiling because they're playing defense. They're getting on the floor first. I mean, really, you ask any coach, what are some of the, first top three qualities you want in your team? You want a team that just plays their butts off, and that's exactly what they're doing. You watch Sam Griesel, he's always first on the floor. You watch, Walker's trying to climb a guy's back to save a ball when he has 3 fouls. And they really have accepted their roles, and you can see that they're really playing for each other. Sometimes when you get a little smaller bench, it's easier to coach because you can define those roles. You have time for Tamanaga to get open. You set a few more screens for him because he's that guy that needs to hit those threes and spread the floor. And you're not playing 10 or 11. You're playing 7, 8, or 9. And it's just a little easier to get into your roles and know what guys are going to do. And you play together a little more. There's not as many combinations on the floor. So Fred and those guys have done a great job, number one, of just flipping the script on their defensive intensity, and that's made a huge difference in the importance of defense and rebounding, but also finding what these guys do well and just amplifying that from game to game of what they do.
Coach, Fred was asked post-game about that defense. He was asked, has anything flipped within the past couple weeks with what you're doing with these new guys, now down Bandemel and Gary? Does feel like that defense is different. He said, we're not doing anything confusing. It's just the guys going out there putting in effort, and I think you're kind of echoing the same. Have you seen anything different, or is it literally just the guys going out there and being intense on defense?
Not a lot. They're mixing a little more zone in to keep teams off balance, and I think to protect guys foul-wise, just give them different looks. But one thing they do, if you watch really close, and I've spent some time talking to Coach Lenzer, they have really active hands, and they have high hands a lot. When they're off the ball, their hands are off, and they're getting a lot of deflections and or steals from those skips to the far corner. They've taken a lot of those lately. And it's just and I think he used the word activity. You watch Sam Hoiberg, and he's not getting beat off the dribble very often by guys that are clearly quicker than him and have a little size on him. And it's just their feet are active. They're communicating very well when they're switching or when they're going under or when they're fighting over the top. I think it's just a case, as I watch them, they've just gotten better game to game. I think Coach Lenzer and his philosophy, who I know does a lot of the teaching, is no middle philosophy. And he's just really stuck with what they decided to do this year, and they're just getting better and better at it as time goes. And they're really solid right now.
Coach Jeff Smith is with us, Hail Varsity Radio, talking some Husker hoops before we dive into high school boys districts. And you've been in this position, too, where you've had some key dudes go down. You've got to adapt. You've got to adjust. And you hope that their prep and they've stayed engaged, right? Okay, next man up, great saying. Can you actually get that production Nebraska has? Speak to that ability from a coach to a player to keep guys engaged and then get them to go produce. Because you've got guys, Tominaga's supposed to drill threes, right? But he's been on a great heater. Sam Hoiberg's the coach's kid, but he's more than that. You have other players, even a Wiltshire. He's amped and upped his game. The whole cast has been fantastic.
Yeah, and the thing that I guess was fortunate, if those injuries had to happen, is they happened early enough that so you could see Jamarcus Lawrence take 3 or 4 or 5 games to really get comfortable as a starter and really start producing. And now he's probably shooting the ball better than Bandemel was when he was playing earlier, and now he's contributing defensively, maybe not quite the level of Bandemel, but he's solid. And so he had time to adjust. I've had teams where we've had injuries late, and you lose 3 of your last 5, and you kind of tank it. They struggled a little bit finding their new identity, but they had time to find that. They had time to get guys comfortable in accelerated roles, and they have done a great job. Now, I think it's going to get tougher for Tominaga. They're starting to study his tendencies, his cuts, what he's doing when Walker has the ball. That's not going to get any easier, and Michigan State will be real physical with him. But they let these guys get comfortable in new roles, really forced them to. They had no choice. And I got to believe there was a lot of positivity in that locker room and in the meeting rooms, and really pointing out the positive things they were doing and say, you can keep doing that. You can keep being first on the floor. You can keep outrunning them up the floor. You can. Your defensive intensity doesn't have to change. That's stuff you control. So do those things you control, and then they start seeing the ball go in, and then it's just the whole team confidence is different. And now they believe they're going to walk on the floor. I was actually worried about a trap game with Minnesota because that's how confident we are now that we can walk on the floor and play with anybody. And luckily they took care of business, and Michigan State's not a trap game. They know how good they are, and they know how they play with physicality and rebounding the ball, and so that's going to be a big test.
Tell me about Sparty. What Sparty is walking in here? A team that's angry, a team that's got to have a win, or a team that is on fumes, especially giving up 13 points in the final 60 seconds to lose in overtime?
No, those losses hurt you. They hurt you, and the coaches are going to let you know that that's not acceptable. That loss is going to generate some serious energy and effort coming in here, and they're on that kind of bubble with us where we're not too far behind them in the standings. Let's see, I think they are 9-8, and we're 8-10. So they're not too far out of dropping down where they maybe got to play one of those early games, and that's not Michigan State basketball. So Tyson Walker had a really good game against us last time, and he's a tough guard to handle. And we don't have Bandamel out there guarding him this time either. Hauser's really good at shooting threes, and he's big enough to post up. And then they just have such good athletes, and their philosophy is so sound with their defensive principles, and they're just known for rebounding. And we've gotten a lot better. I mean, when you see Tominaga getting a foul for a guy climbing his back and he gets fouled and gets to go to the line, that's a really good sign that he's boxing out like that. So. To answer your question, I think they're going to be really, really hungry and pissed off, and so I think that's what's going to. But I think our guys know that. I think our guys know that they're going to play intense no matter what because they're Michigan State. But when you blow leads like that, it's you're ready to play your next one like that night.
Coach Jeff Smith is with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radios. We'll talk some more Nebraska, Michigan State tomorrow down at Rosie's 4 to 6. Come and see us. But Coach Smith, I want to switch gears here. Talk some Nebraska high school basketball district finals coming up here in Class A boys. And when you look at the field of 14 that remains, only 8 can make it to state, but there's 6 Lincoln schools that remain. Lincoln Northeast, Lincoln North Star. You have Lincoln Southeast, Lincoln East, Lincoln Southwest, and Lincoln High. A field of 6 making the district finals. Impressive for Lincoln High School basketball. Based on what we've seen this year, not too much of a surprise. I just want to get your take, being a longtime coach here in Lincoln High School basketball. What does that mean to you, seeing 6 schools with a chance to make it to state?
I'm elated. It's been a long time. I remember when Lincoln High and Southeast, we were in the finals together, and there was always a lot. Northeast was a major factor in the state all the time. It's been a while. It's really been a while since we've had multiple teams, and it's kind of funny how it all came together. With all these teams have a little bit of size, they have really good guard play, and I think obviously Northeast has the toughest hill to climb playing Bell West, and they played once earlier, and Bell West got them by 23. But Northeast is scrappy, and they'll go in there and with nothing to lose, and I think put up a fight. But Dosler and Jackson are 2 Division I guards that Bell West have that are just so talented with guys around them. I think the North Star Gretna game is a toss-up game. I think it's a call-it game. Gretna beat them by 2 at their place not too long ago, and I think one of the North Star bigs. Is either Sandonell or Clemens fouled out late in that game. I think North Star is probably ready to upset them and could get to state doing that. Southeast Prep, I went and watched them 2 weeks ago, two and a half weeks ago. Southeast led that game for 3.5 quarters, And then Dak got in foul trouble and got tired and fouled out, and Prep hit 2 threes late to beat them by 5. And then Schmidt and I called the Southwest East game 3 weeks ago or so, and that was just not a good time for Southwest. They had a bad game there. They followed that up the next night and got beat by Westside pretty bad. But I think they're a different team right now. I think they've worked some things out chemistry-wise on their team. I think that'll be probably a toss-up game as well. And East would have a decent chance of getting in wild card if Southwest would. They'd be the first Lincoln team that have a chance to get a wild card if Southwest would beat them. So, and then Lincoln High goes up and plays Westside. They have not played yet this year. And Lincoln High is a team that can win with their defense. If their offense is solid enough, they can win with their defense. And Westside will be a tough foe for them, though, because they have talented guards to match up with Lincoln High.
Looking at tonight's matchup, we'll have here locally on KFOR. East is so patient, they're so calculated, and their guys, the Carters, they hit big shots. I mean, it was a tight game with Southwest, and then a bomb went off.
Yeah, Templemeyer and Carter Mick are averaging right around 15 a game, each of them. The thing I like about East is they're all about 6'3". They can all handle the ball. You love teams like that have that kind of versatility. Christian Melissa's 6'3", but he can post and score inside and outside, a really good rebounder. Townsley's another 6'3" kid that averages about 10 a game and 4.7 rebounds. They're so balanced, and they have so many guys that can contribute on any night. And the night we saw them, I think that second half, they were all on, and that's why they extended that lead and won by 16. But they don't make a lot of mistakes. They take care of the ball really well, and that's tough for Southwest because they're not real patient defensively sometimes. So they'll have to keep Southwest off the glass. I think they'll have to execute against a gambling pressure defense and maybe some 1-3-1 that Southwest will play. And then, all teams have to make shots. Southwest, on the other hand, Chuck Love's been playing really well. He leads them in scoring, 17.3 a game. And then they have depth, too, with Helms and Freger. Ryland Smith is a senior point guard, averages 11.9. So, on paper, this is a great matchup to go watch tonight and could be just an excellent district championship game.
Coach, we'll see you in about an hour. Thanks for the time.
Sounds good. I'll see you over there, Chris. See you.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down on Monday, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and can watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter feed also gives you the video stream at H Varsity Radio. Numbers to get in 489-1240, 489-1240, or toll free where you hear us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network, 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. So a little bit more on Dylan Raiola and the big announcement last night. Snuck out to dinner down in Glendale last night in Arizona, not far from State Farm Stadium. Went to a tap room, not a shock. Had some cheese curds with Uncle Mark and Joe Mama, and had a Pacifico. I did also order a taco. It was wonderful. But I get a text from Elijah, dude, announcement coming down at 7. And I'm thinking it's this. In the text I'm reading, it's movie trailer sound. Announcement coming at 7. And, well, there was an announcement, and what a list.
The announcement was Hayes Fawcett, who he's a guy, I remember him actually from my days back in high school. He got his start in the college football industry being a guy who just made graphics for kids. Just, picture the kid in the high school uniform. Here's the college choices behind it. They started out being all right. He got better and better at it until I think it was his senior year of high school. Actually, he was the kid or the guy that all the kids around the country went to. You need a recruitment graphic, you're a high level guy, you go to Hayes Fawcett. So he's been doing this for years now of just being the guy that is going to post up either your commitment graphic, here's your top 3 schools, here's the date when I'm going to commit, whatever you want as a commit. you would go to him, and in return, the only thing that he wanted was the inside information on your recruitment. So
I'll make it for you. Where are you going?
Yeah, so it was the trade-off of I'm going to be your recruiting insider, but I'm also going to make your graphics. You don't have to pay me for the graphics. You just have to give me the inside information. That was always his go-to. He's parlayed that into a pretty good recruiting job.
Sure.
And whenever he posts up, you know what, we got a Dylan Raiola post coming down tonight, you assume, okay, you got some inside information here. You're going to be making him a graphic. Wonder what's going to be happening. Well, it turns out...
You just click on offers, and you could have had the same info.
Well, Hayes apparently does not have contact with Raiola here, considering the fact that Raiola did not acknowledge this post in any way, shape, or form on his social media. This is just... He's just trying to capitalize on Nebraska,
the buzz, baby.
The buzz.
The clicks.
He was in Lincoln.
Big
Everyone
Red
cares.
Army.
Now we're going to make a graphic for Dylan. We're not going to allude to what it is. We're just going to let you wait. And it's a list of all the offers that he has in the country, which is a lot of offers. A lot of them probably aren't even in the running anymore. It was a waste of a post, and it had Husker Nation all fired up, and now Husker Nation is angry. And on one hand, you go, dude, like, you should know better. You should know exactly what was going to happen whenever you posted this. You should know. On the other hand, I go, well, you did your job pretty well. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of people have seen that image now? How many people have clicked on your post? I guess you did your job, but just strikes me as a little bit shady of a way to go about it.
Well,
he actually reached out to a Husker fan that I follow on Twitter, Parker_NEB.
Yeah. Parker,
yeah. And he reached out to him because Parker was complaining, and he said, and I quote, "To be fair," and if you start off a message with "to be fair," that means honestly, you guys have a point, but in my defense. Anyway, he starts off, "To be fair, I never said anything about an announcement. You Nebraska fans really jumped to that conclusion extremely fast. I simply put
a hope.
Dylan Raiola post. Your fan pages took that screenshot and made a misleading caption to trigger y'all to think he is committing. Sorry for the misunderstanding, but that is by no means my fault." That is the direct quote from Hayes following that.
I can't tell you how to feel, what you want. Pretty good feedback in the stream today. We'll highlight some of our input. You want to be a part of the show and you don't want to call in or email, all good. Can jump in the stream with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, can submit comments that way, or also on Twitter with at HVarsity Radio. You got Brennan checking in. Dylan Raiola, it's your move. Brett saying, look, in my opinion, the writing's on the wall. Family means a lot to both the Raiolas and Husker Nation. Elijah wanted me to just be a call-in today. That's okay. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's Chris on I-80 calling into the show today.
Got to pull over. Got to end this call.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
And Brett follows up, second part of his message. Dylan would be a program changer in many ways. The situation at NU, similar to that of Oklahoma in the late 90s, the program changer for OU was getting Bob Stoops, the assistant coach at Florida, and getting him back in the Big Ten where he played, it looked like it was going to be Ferentz or Stoops, and right there, Oklahoma's like, let's go get Stoopsy. They did. They get Leach in. They get Mangino in. They get a pretty good quarterback from JUCO that's killing it for Tennessee right now as head coach. And the rest is history. And by the way, John Blake loaded that cupboard up. Some guys were just playing the wrong side of the ball. And OU makes a championship run just 2 years into the Stoops era. They had their offense and the air raid that took college football by storm, and they had the right pieces there. But the coach was the difference maker. You get the coach and the system or quarterback to hit, game on, man. Game on for a football program that's a blue blood that's been struggling. Oklahoma went through their decade post-Switzer and got it flipped around 3 coaches later. See if Nebraska can do the same with Rule and landing Raiola.
And the question with Raiola is, what type of kid is he? Whenever you look at this weekend, you look at the recruiting push. Is he the type of kid that's going to appreciate a full court press of sorts? You send every single assistant coach down to Arizona to go visit him. Whenever he comes up to Nebraska, it's the fans chanting his name, wanting the acknowledgement from him. After the game, it's selfies on Canopy Street. It's what type of kid is Dylan Raiola? Is that something he appreciates, or is that something that's going to annoy him? Because me personally, I think that would annoy me, but I'm also not a 17-year-old kid that's the number one player in the country. That is so far from what I ever could have experienced that I don't quite know if I put myself in his shoes what that experience would be like to me. But that is the question right now. Is he the type of guy that wants the full court press in his recruitment? Does he want all the assistant coaches to come visit him? Does he want every single fan of this program to know who he is before he even steps foot on campus? By early accounts, what it looks like the reception was to this weekend, the way that Nebraska seemingly, from reading the tea leaves, has skyrocketed to the top of his board from being a school he wasn't even considering to now being top of the board with Nebraska being the final visit weekend he's going to be taking in the spring. It seems like it's working, but that is the question moving forward. Is that the type of approach that he is going to appreciate and he's going to respect? And I guess we'll probably know here in the next
6 weeks.
90 days, yeah?
Well, the thing that is a 180 is just the current staff and how dogged they are with recruiting him, but also investing in that relationship development. And don't know officially or not if Raiola was spurned or had a bad taste from maybe some missteps with the previous staff in his recruitment. A lot of swirling with that, but it's been mended, you would think. And Uncle Donnie, big time. We'll wind down a Monday edition of Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One last time, it's Elijah Herbel here wrapping up a Monday edition of Hail Varsity Radio as Schmidt is off to broadcast some high school basketball again for our local listeners or even our listeners across the state. Check it out. Lincoln East hosting Lincoln Southwest, the District A5 final. The winner goes to state. So Lincoln is confirmed to have at least one Lincoln school that will be attending the state tournament. Will it be Lincoln East? Will it be Lincoln Southwest? Find out 7 o'clock here locally on KFOR. If you're listening in across the state and you want to check that game out, check it out, KFORnow.com. Click listen live and you can check out high school basketball action tonight here on KFOR. It's also a great way to check out Hail Varsity Radio whenever you're listening from across the state. You don't know what station it's on when you're in, say, Columbus, or maybe you're taking a business trip out to Kearney for the weekend and you want to hear where you can listen to Hail Varsity Radio. Check it out, KFORnow.com. That's where you stream us live. Or if you want the video version, the Hail Varsity YouTube page, the Hail Varsity Twitter page, 2 great places to find the video live stream Hail Varsity Radio daily from 4 to 6 weekends beginning this week. Or I guess beginning next week will be live streamed online only and then posted up later in podcast form. So that's the change we are making to Hail Varsity Radio. If you missed that in our Saturday show, now you are learning. Our Saturday show from now on will not be on the air. It will be strictly an online exclusive. You can find the live stream 7:30 to 9, give or take, beginning the Saturday after this next upcoming Saturday. So that's whenever we make the switch. This Saturday, we're going to be taking it off as we go through some logistics, making that switch, but then we'll be getting going with that. We hope to bring you some more awesome Saturday morning content. Again, 7:30 to 9, beginning a week from Saturday. We switch to online only. Before we get out of here for this show, and it's been a good show today. We had Jay Moore back in hour 1. Will Wilson popped in for a segment ahead of him producing our show tomorrow night at Rosie's. And then we also had Schmitty check in from Arizona before the flight to talk some Dylan Raiola. That was all back in hour 1. Here at this hour, we had Brady Oltmans talking recruiting, mostly Dylan Raiola to lead off the hour. And then Jeff Smith joined to talk some Husker basketball, talk some prep action, as that was at 5:25. If you missed any of the show today, check it out in podcast form. I'll have it posted up here shortly following the show. Again, the Hail Varsity YouTube page. You can find the video version there, or you can get it in podcast wherever you like to get those. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon Music. Really, wherever you get podcasts, you can check it out there. Or I'll have a link posted up tonight on the Hail Varsity Twitter page, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter page, I should say, at H Varsity Radio. Before we get out of here, the news of the day in the NFL, the Bears looking to shop that number 1 overall pick. Who's going to trade up for their quarterback? We've seen some mock drafts putting the Colts there there. And the interesting thing is, that the Texans are going to take a quarterback at 2. You'd assume whoever trades up at 1 is going to take either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. The Texans are going to get whoever they fall to, unless they decide they want to trade up 1 spot, which would be interesting and something to follow. But with the Bears looking to shop that first overall pick, if that trade does end up being made to whoever, it would pretty much confirm that the 1 and 2 would be quarterbacks in the NFL draft this year. So that's something to follow. Your candidates for trading up. You look at Tampa Bay. Where are they going to be going following Tom Brady? Are they candidates to trade up for the number 1 overall pick? How badly do they want to use that talent on their roster and be good again? Are they going to commit themselves to a full rebuild? You also have the Colts, another great option. Washington cutting Carson Wentz today. Are they looking to trade up and get a quarterback? A lot of teams, a lot of candidates. We'll see where the next couple weeks take us in NFL draft news. As it's Combine Week, exciting. You always get a lot of news coming out of the NFL this week, so we'll stay on the pulse of that. We'll be back tomorrow from 4 to 6. We're going to be down at Rosie's, the downtown location. Get a drink, get some wings, get some food, get yourself geared up for Husker basketball. Schmitty, myself, Will Wilson taking you through the show tomorrow, 4 to 6. That's when we'll talk to you again.